Hi, this is Megan Jacks, and I am here with sketch number 2 from the October 2022 Creative Memories Virtual Crop. And we have a 2-page sketch here. You can see it's got the various photos on here. You're going to have probably a little more flexibility than you might think with how you arrange your photos on here. So think of these photo placements as just suggestions. Really, to me, the key feature of this layout is going to be the background itself. So I give you some ideas here on sizes. You can think of this as coming up with a background. Maybe you have this top lighter gray be your background, and then you could layer on a chunky piece here at the bottom. They'd be about 6¼ inches tall. Or you could have the background piece be the bottom piece here and layer on your top segments here. That would actually probably be a little bit easier to do. The key thing to me, at least for this layout, is this wide border through the middle. They show using kind of like they suggest 3 border elements here. Something to think about and how I'm approaching it is actually using the same border punch all the way through, just varying the colors of the paper or the cardstock that you use. That would be an option there. So I do tell you, if you wanted to have the border, the background to that border area be a different color, I would start off with a 2-inch section there, and then you can layer those 3 border elements across that. Now, I am going to be completely honest with you. The placement of the photos on here is just a little bit random, and it may work great for the photos that you have. For what I had going on, I'm really focused on the border section. That is, this center border piece is really the element of this sketch that I'm going to be carrying over into my example. So bear with me. Ignore the placement of the photos in the sketch itself, because we're going to be totally going off kilter. And that's just, I've said it before, sometimes your photos will take you on a different route from the sketch, but the sketch is where we're starting. There will be some elements that you see come through from the sketch, but when we get all said and done, I really like what I've created. It just doesn't quite, these photo placements are just going to be a little bit different. So to get started, I have to tell you, one of the reasons that the photo placements are so different is because I have a lot of horizontal photos. So when I was in Minnesota for the Creative Memories Convention, Tessa and I went on a walk kind of around downtown across the Mississippi River here, and saw they have the dams and everything in place there. So we did a walking tour kind of that area. So I have all these great photos, but they were all horizontal. So looking back to this sketch, I can see I can put 2 horizontal images across the top. So a total of 4 across the top and 4 across the bottom. And I was able to, I had probably 12 or 13 photos that I was able to whittle them down to the 8 that I wanted to include. I could peekaboo pocket them if I wanted to add some more, but I have 8 photos that I'm going to be working with. And let me show you how this is all going to come together. So for this layout, I am using the Timeworn Textures paper. I did another layout earlier this week for Power Hour that is from photos from our Minnesota trip that I use Timeworn Texture on. I use a little bit of Wanderlust. You're going to see I have some of the mats in here from Wanderlust. Again, pulling in that hot fudge cardstock. This is the copper shimmer paper that was available as kind of a promo pack from a previous cardstock buffet that Creative Memories had earlier this summer. So I'm going to be pulling up my trimming mat. I want to use this. In fact, I'm going to put both of my mats up here, because since I'm doing a 2-page layout, I'm going to work with both trimming mats. Get these put in place so I can make sure that I'm staying nice and even across both pages. All right, so there we go. I have these pages kind of arranged already. I've got all the elements I need. So I've got background papers. So like I said, I'm using the Timeworn Texture collection. So you can see my background here. I will be using the River Waves punch. It was a promo punch from earlier this, maybe that was in August, early August that came out. And I have these wonderful horizontal photos. So I'm going to walk you through how this whole thing came about. All right. So I'm going to walk you through my steps of why I did what I did. So initially what I wanted to do is I wanted to put together these photos that I had. So I went through my photos. I had these horizontal photos and I picked them out. So this was the start of our journey kind of across this walking tour. And then we could go over here. We found this spot where you can see the dam. You can get a view of some construction that they're doing on one of the bridges. And then you can, we worked our way down across this other bridge. It's only a footbridge. And then we saw the lock that they have in place so that these ships can get through. So there you can see, I'm trying to tell a story across the top, and then the next bit of the story comes across the bottom. All right, so the reason I went with this paper is you can see I've got a very different top than I do from the bottom. So in the sketch, they kind of insinuate, because this is a lighter gray versus a darker gray, that we have a different paper up here at the top than we do at the bottom, with the border in the middle kind of giving us that transition from top to bottom. Well, I have a piece of paper that is very different at the top than it is at the bottom. So that's why I decided I could just use this paper. I wouldn't have to piece together anything. It was going to work out just fine. So there's the photos. Then it was kind of like, okay, what do I want to do here in the middle? And so I looked at my punches. I said, I want to do a punch. I wanted to do something. And then I saw river waves. And I really like this. It really goes with the Mississippi River. So I punched some river waves in the hot fudge. I actually ended up punching 2 of those. And I thought, well, maybe I'll just stack 3 river waves on top of each other and just do the kind of that tonal brown all the way down. And I was like, well, maybe I could put something in the middle. So separate these 2 and I could do something down the middle. Well, then I wasn't sure. I looked at my options and I was just like, oh, I don't know about this. And then I remembered that I had that really lovely copper shimmer paper. So I went ahead and I punched river waves with a copper shimmer. And then I just stacked it on there and I was like, oh, I like that. So it's kind of hard to see on camera, but that copper shimmer is just really, really nice. The colors pair well. It picks up a little bit of the brick color down here at the bottom of the page. So I'm going to do that across both sides of the page. It's going to be the river waves in hot fudge, copper, and then hot fudge again. So there's my 3-segment border. That's just like the sketch. All right. I said, I love that border, that concept coming across here with that big chunky border in the middle. Now I'm looking at this and I was like, oh, I need to get these photos to pop off the page a little bit more, right? That they need to stand out from the bottom here. So what I ended up doing is I come back to this hot fudge and I went ahead and I trimmed some 4-inch pieces, and I trimmed these, and it's hard to tell. Let me see if I can get it up there and you can see. I trimmed it with a wavy edge. So these are 4 inches wide and they're going to serve as mats to my photos. So what I ended up doing then is coming back to my photos and trimming my photos down a little bit. So I've trimmed my photos down so that they are about 3 3/4 inch tall. And I took off a little out of the middle so that there'll be some spacing. It's got that dark mat all the way around them. And I went ahead and trimmed 4 of those pieces. So I was actually able to I ended up using 2 pieces of hot fudge cardstock. I was able to get the 2 4-inch segments with the wavy cut, and then I've 2 of the river waves out of 1 sheet. So I used 1 sheet for this page, 1 sheet for this page. Did the same thing with that wavy blade. It's going to come in here at the top. I am starting to cover up more of the designer paper maybe than I had hoped to do so, but that's just sometimes the way it goes. I wasn't able to come up with a way that made sense to just cut apart my decorative paper here and just kind of segment it on my like use the cardstock as the base piece. So I just left it for just ease of this. So there we go. Now you can start to see it's taking shape a little bit more. So now it starts like, where do I put in, a title or some of these other decorative details? I mean, I'm skipping the photo placement, but now I've got to work in some decorative details. So they have some journaling down here. They've got an embellishment cluster up there with maybe a little spot to do a little title or something else. So now I'm trying to work in some of those additional details. So I went through the Wanderlust mats because I really like them. And I found this title box. It just says out and about. And I really just like the colors. It was kind of that little bit more, not bright, stark white. So I trimmed that in half. And I'm just going to tuck that in. It's kind of just a little title because we really were just out and about. We decided to go on a walk, enjoy the beautiful Minneapolis day, and see a little bit of the city. So now I needed some other details. I wanted to get a spot for a little bit of journaling. I don't have a ton of journaling. I just needed a couple spots for a little bit. I thought about using the other half of this mat right here. When I cut it in half, I was left with this section and I thought, oh, I can just come over here and put it in as such and just kind of mimic those two things. What I didn't care for, and this was me being picky, is this is kind of a more softer brown. And here we have this stark white. So I really just wasn't digging that. So I decided not to go that route. I'll save this for something else. So then it turned into, well, I wanted to get a little bit of some additional details in here. So I went through the mats again and I came across this little mat. I cut it up. It says, heart this place. And it really was. This was very, very, very beautiful. We had a great time walking around. The day was gorgeous. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to come in and trim out a little bit of my photos here and tuck this heart this place in there. And then I have a journal box that I was able to cut out. Actually, it was these two are tied together. So I'm going to go ahead and work this in down here. I'm going to trim, I'm going to reduce the width on some of these photos. I'm really into this grid look right now. That's just something that I'm really using a lot. Sometimes I go through those trends where I just use a lot of the same. It works well for these photos that they're a little bit more architecture and scenery based. And it'll be a theme that carries through, I'm sure, with all of my photos from this trip, just doing that little bit of a grid theme. So then I had the detail like, okay, what am I going to do between these two photos, the photos up here and the photos here? So what I did there is I cut a little bit of that copper shimmer into a 1/2 inch by 3 3/4 inch strip. And I will just tuck those in there. So, and then I have one last thing for sure that I'm going to add on here. I will probably add a little bit more details, maybe with some more embellishments. The Wanderlust stickers, these are the border stickers. I have a little bit more space here at the bottom. I am pushing everything up a little bit higher to the top. That is kind of a detail in the sketch. If you come here, you will see that we have a little bit wider spot here at the bottom and a little bit narrower here at the top. Our border is not halfway in the middle. It's a little bit towards the top. So I have a bit of space here and I'm actually just going to come in with these cute little cameras at the very bottom. I think that'll be a nice additional detail, just balances it out. That's my plan. And then I think there are a couple other little details in the stickers and in the embellishments that I can add in there. So what I need to do here now is I just need to start trimming some things down, and I'll grab my personal trimmer and I will get that going. So I need to remove a little over 1/2 inch from each of these photos. And I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. And I want to make sure that I have room for that bar in the middle. So that's going to be good there. So I'm going to go ahead and stick these photos in place. I don't normally show so much of the actual assembly, but I wanted to go ahead, put this together. You can see how it's always a little bit of a work in progress. I start off usually with the sketch when I'm thinking, oh, I want to do something with this sketch, and I find photos and I lay the photos out. And I have one of those scrap easels that is a magnetic board, and I go ahead and just lay those out on my scrap easel. And then I start to look at placement. Where do I want to, how do I want to lay out the photos? What are the other elements that I need to include? Do I need to crop my photos down? Do I need to reprint any photos? If I love a sketch and I really need to get photos a different size, do I need to reprint something? A lot of times I don't like to do that. Sometimes when I work with a sketch, I'm printing fresh from scratch. I am starting with photos off of my computer that have not been printed yet. This particular piece here, I'm actually going to trim it down just a little bit narrower so I don't have to cut quite as much off of my photos. It's just a narrow little part this place. So I'll start with that. I have a very squeaky personal trimmer. So now I'm just going to come back to my photos and trim off a bit of my photos. And it's a little bit of trial and error to get everything to fit into where I want it. I need to trim a bit more, or I need to narrow down. I want my photos to be about the same. Keep moving these into place. I'm going to narrow this strip just well. I don't want to narrow that too much. I'm going to take down just a little bit now off of this. And I think that should work. Put these into place. But as I was saying, I start off with everything on my scrapping easel, figure out placement. Then I start to think, okay, what am I going to use for a background? Do I need to piece together a background to go with a sketch? And then I start pulling out papers. What looks good? Do I need to go across different collections? And then it's kind of that mad craziness looking through my project folder for different papers. I do try to store all of my papers with their collection. And that way, I know where they are. Now, I'm pretty lucky with memory-wise. I am able to, for the most part, remember which papers are with which collection. So if I needed to be able to say, oh, I need some rustic papers, I know I can go to Wanderlust. I can probably look at, I think Homestead had some, and a few other collections that I can think about to go get. So there you can see this side is starting to really take shape. So now it's just a matter of finishing these up, getting all these other pieces put in place, trim things off. I just need to trim a little bit off of each one of these so that they will fit with that bar in place. Trim just a smidge more. And I have found when working with sketches, sometimes the photos and everything just falls into place. Sketch number 1 of this virtual crop was that way. Things just kind of fell into place. This one, you know, I suspected I was not necessarily going to be able to follow it faithfully just because of the elements that I liked of the layout. I knew the photos were going to be harder for me to get to work in the layout itself. So it was going to be easier for me to just pick out the elements of the layout that I liked and work with that rather than trying to force photos to fit into the design that they gave us. So this, I do need to chunk up quite a bit to get that journal box. I don't want to shrink that journal box too much because I want it to be reasonably wide for me to write on. Otherwise, it's a kind of an awkward column that I'm trying to write. So I just see here, I'm going to have to pull out more off my selfie. And then more off of this lock. Just keep pulling more off of there. I could probably measure it. That would probably be the best if I would just measure it and see how much space I had. I'm going to trim just a smidge off of my there. I don't want to go much narrower than that. I think I should be, I'm going to trim just a smidge more here and then I know I'll be good. And get these pieces put into place. So when you're working with sketches, don't hesitate. If your photos take you in a different direction than the sketch, remember a page done is a page done. And that's really what we want to get. That's the whole goal with doing the sketches. It's just getting started. It's going to, something in that sketch will hopefully inspire you. And that's really what you're looking for, is something to just kind of inspire you, get you going, maybe jumpstart your creativity for the day. Start off the morning with a sketch when you're a little bit more tired, or maybe late at night when you've been cropping all day. Sometimes I like the sketches because they force me to try something I may not have thought of before. And then that is always something I can take away into a different layout. I'll come back to it and I'll remember, oh, I really liked when I had that wide three of the same border in different colors. I liked that effect. Let me try it again in a different layout. So now I'm going to go ahead here, grab my repositionable adhesive and put that on the back here. So the layout is coming together really well. It's now just about assembling. I've kind of meandered on talking a little bit about the process. I would say before I start filming, it probably took me at least 20 to 30 minutes to figure out this layout. I'm not always quick. Sometimes I know I overthink it, especially if I'm going to be making a video for you guys. I want to make sure everything looks really good, but ultimately it's always worth it. I'm always so happy with how they all turn out. I'm just tucking these borders right in next to each other. The river waves all get nice and close together. I'm going to come up here and I want to make sure I'm leaving enough room at the bottom for that sticker border. I think that should be good. Getting that even spacing. Whoops, use regular adhesive to hold this in place. Before I push this down too hard, I am going to go ahead and tuck this under here before I get everything too adhered down. And I just wanted to say the out and about. And now I am going to come across the bottom with that sticker, and I will have the left page mostly done. The only thing that would be left is some little additional details. And I really, really, really like how this has turned out. I mean, I love that grid pattern. Everything has those nice lines around it. The wave details at the top and the bottom are really nice. Goes with the wave here. We've got those cameras at the bottom. So it's all going to work out fantastic. So I'm probably going to go and leave the video here. I will finish assembling this. You guys don't have to listen to me ramble on more and more trying to think of what to talk about. But like I said, with the sketches, just go with it. Let it go where it takes you. Ultimately, that page done is fantastic and really what you want to have at the end of the day. So thanks so much for watching, and you'll see the finished layout at the very end of the video. Thanks.